Back on ABC 24 this week to talk about the Tyre Nichols case and reaction to it, starting with the police chief, C.G.A. Davis. As I said, I was very impressed with her. Ben Crump, the attorney for the family, has said the reaction by the Memphis PD is a blueprint for other incidents that happen along these lines. Otis, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts?
Oh man, there's so much to unpack in that interview, Richard. It was an unbelievable interview. The first word that came to my mind when I was hearing that interview was eloquence. Mm-hmm. She was eloquent and she was passionate and she was strong and she projected leadership in that interview about and the candidness of just how egregious this whole incident is. And she pulled no punches. And it's clear to me, well, it's clear to me a lot of things, but it's clear to me that as an outsider coming in to be the police chief, she's the first outside police chief or police director that we've had since the early 1970s.
Long time.
Long time. Mm-hmm. And so what she was saying near the end of that interview was the culture of this police department has always been so insular that things were allowed to get out of control or to escape anybody's oversight or lax rules and regulations and supervision. And she has seen that firsthand in just over a year and a half, and that is what she's committed to doing right now. It's just a shame that a murder, mm-hmm. if you and
that's what the charges are.
That's the charge, mm-hmm. Of a 29-year-old unarmed, innocent African-American man is going to be the catalyst for that. But it is.
Brad, you know, as reporters, we're paid to be very cynical, especially when it comes to police. Yeah. That's part of our job, honestly. But I was struck how honest she was, even about the phone call she got at 4 a.m., that so much time went by, and she's not happy about that. And it was like 10 in the morning, a few hours later, that she was able to assemble the city attorney, the DA, and the mayor to see the video. And it was her first time to see it, too, right along with them. Mm-hmm. And as she said, that's when the ball started rolling.
Yeah, I think you really get a sense of the seriousness, and it really captures how serious they knew this was from the get-go. I mean, 4 o'clock in the morning, and to Otis's point, I mean, a lot of talk about supervision. You know, I think that's a lot of, you know, what's going on with that, because it makes you wonder who else is going to be held accountable with this. I left that interview thinking, are we talking, you know, higher up the chain? Because clearly she used the word supervision, lack of supervision. Someone could have been intercepted this and prevented this from happening, potentially, of this young man dying. So certainly a lot more to go. I don't think these charges announced yesterday are the end of this by any stretch.
Oh, I totally agree. The supervisor of whoever those five the officers are, whoever that supervisor is probably looking for another job at this point. And even, you know, we hear from the family that they wanted to get in to see Tyre at the hospital, but police told them you can't come in and see him. It was a doctor that had to call her and say, yeah, you can come in and see your son.
Wow. And there's also a lot, you know, about what's going on with these specialized units. I mean, the Scorpion unit, we covered this in late 2021 when it was about what were they were going after serious crime, car thefts, etc. So how did we go from that to a traffic stop? I think that remains to be seen of why this unit went for this specific call. Still out there, a huge question.
Huge question.
I just think that the spotlight is definitely on the Scorpion unit and the tactics that they use. And as Chief Davis said, there are other units around there. But right now we're talking about the Scorpion unit. And to be a little self-serving here, the Institute for Public Service Reporting did an exhaustive story just the other day that went through a litany of incidents and encounters that this unit, including some of these same officers who were indicted, who were rousting people, who were cursing people, who were pushing them around and using like tinted windows and maybe expired temporary tags as a pretext to stop somebody, but then rough them up and push them around. I mean, that is not the kind of policing that we want, even though we want stepped up policing. And I think that's going to be the issue here. I would expect to see that the Scorpion unit itself, because it's so tarnished now, will be disbanded, and they'll figure out another way to deal with how do we put more boots on the ground in the neighborhoods that we need to do.
Do you believe, after the independent investigation takes place of the Scorpion unit and the others, that this police chief will take action and we'll take whatever action I guess is necessary to improve the culture that she talked about?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, well, if you listen to what she just said to you, it was clear that she is committed to doing that. Because again, she is from the outside. She doesn't have anybody to play favors with. And that's not to say that the other police directors that we have had were playing favors. I think some of them were. But she doesn't have that kind of baggage. And so I do believe that if she does not do this, she's not going to stay here. Because this is a commitment that I heard her talk about in that interview. I believe wholeheartedly that she's going to make the changes necessary.
And back in 2021, how many times, if you remember, Mayor Strickland was talking about kind of her coming from the outside, bringing fresh ideas. You know, maybe it was a time to have someone kind of coming from a perspective. And her reforms in the Durham, North Carolina Police Department drew a lot of national attention, visits with the president. So that's going to be interesting to see. And I mean, you see what we initially saw in that email initially about, okay, there was a confrontation, but how did we go from a traffic stop, and then you see the hospital pictures, and then there's just no human way that there was proper use of force there. And clearly, it's clear with these criminal charges, the DA believes that as well.
Yeah, and what remains so frustrating to all of us, but including the police chief, is the why. We just not being able to figure out, well, what caused this huge amped up response way from the beginning?
Well, from the fact that she and Steve Mulroy said this at his press conference, that she wasn't invited to. I mean,
we'll talk about that too.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But both of them said at the very beginning it was amped up. She used the scale of 1 to 10, it was a 10 at the very beginning. Why would that be? It doesn't make any sense. And so again, training, inexperience, maybe they've been getting away with this before. And in this case, they were already amped up. The kid got away from them. They didn't like that. And so they exacted the unbelievable punishment when they caught up with him again. This is just unbelievable how this could turn into a homicide and a beating that is so horrific that the whole nation is appalled by this.
Let's talk about the Mulroy-Davis dynamic real quick. Steve Mulroy, the DA, he did make kind of a flip comment about her not being there at the news conference, like for some reason she chose not to be there. She says, well, no, I was never invited. What do you make about that first, Brad, and then we'll get Otis's perspective?
I mean, we kind of talked about this since August and since you won the election. I know back in November, you remember we covered the marijuana where Steve Mulroy said, even if the Arkansas the recreational marijuana passes, we're not going to enforce it. And then the MPD, represented by Chief Davis, said, well, if you're breaking the law, we're going to arrest you. So there seemed to be some sort of different set of opinions back in November. This leads to another question. However, if we're going to go by Attorney Ben Crump and Tyre Nichols' mother and stepfather, they're on the same page of supporting both the DA and the police chief. So as the temperature of this community, we're questioning where it's going to be. That's been kind of a unified comment. But it does kind of, again, lead to the question of what is their dynamic?
Yeah, I just believe that I don't think that Chief Davis would have said she wasn't invited if she had been invited. I just don't believe that. And so as we tape this on a Friday afternoon, I want to hear from Steve Mulroy about why did you say that if she was not invited? Because all it did was throw shade on her. And I think she responded to that with a lot of candidness by saying, I didn't get invited. So we got to find out why she did not get invited. But we don't want that to be a distraction to the main thing.
No, and I hesitated to even ask the question.
But it needed to be asked.
But because she is the police chief and he is the DA, they do need to get along.
They gotta get along, especially in this case.
Right.
And as far as I knew, up until that point, they were getting along. And they have been sort of in lockstep about the need to do quick justice here swiftly, and that's why Ben Crump is calling this a playbook, textbook
Yeah.
way to handle these cases. All the other police departments in the nation look at Memphis.
And that's, I mean, it's terrifying what happened and absolutely terrible, but if there is some good that can come out of that, boy, I would love for other police departments to follow that model.
I agree.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll continue this conversation right after this.